Hello, it's Alex, the Booktubers. Today I am doing a Q&A and giveaway to celebrate my channel reaching 5,000 subscribers recently. And yeah, I just wanted to say another big thank you to everyone for being here, who has been here, whether it's been since the early days or whether you have found my channel more recently. I really appreciate you being here, so thank you ever so much. And I wanted to do something to mark the occasion, to mark the milestone. So yeah, thank you to everyone who submitted questions, and thank you to those who entered the giveaway. I'm giving away 2 copies of the Lurking in the Dark anthology, and before sitting down to film this video, I did I used an online comment picker to pick 2 winners. And the winners were Kritz Read and Dutchess. So well done to both of you. Please email me at thebooktubers@gmail.com. Let me know your address and I will get the book sent out to you. So well done. I hope you enjoy the book. Okay, and onto the Q&A section. So I had 20 something questions submitted and I was going through them because some of them I had to think about or prepare for, whereas other ones I'll just, give a more of an off-the-cuff answer. But I did consider grouping them into, questions about books, questions about movies, whatever, but then I just didn't do that. Basically, I figured we'll just go in the order that they showed up for me when I went back to the questions just now to make a list of them, and it'll just be like a variety, a surprise as to what kind of question comes next. So anyway, first question is from the lovely Pax Panic, and anyone that has asked a question that has a booktube channel as well, I will leave a link to their channel because you should absolutely go check all of these lovely people out and subscribe to their channels. So Pax Panic asked, what is a book you think the whole world should read? And I really had to think about this, and my answer isn't a great one, unfortunately, because I don't think there is a book that everyone should read. I don't think there is that one book that everyone should read. So that's a completely lame answer and probably not the best one to start off this session with. Hopefully I will have some better answers coming up. But if it's just a book that I would recommend, people who like the same stuff that I do should read, then yeah, I still always recommend The Cipher by Kathy Koja, and a couple more 90s horror favourites are This Symbiotic Fascination by Charlie Jacob and Stitch by Mark Morris, which was a recent read for me and I absolutely loved it. So yeah, I think if you like the same stuff that I do and you haven't read those ones, then I highly suggest you pick them up. But yeah, they're definitely not something I would recommend to everyone. So yeah, that might not be the best answer to that interesting question, but yeah, there you go. Hey, it's Laurie, the lovely Laurie, asked me, have you been able to do any thrifting lately? And if so, maybe you could show us your coolest find. So Laurie has been a long time subscriber, so thank you so much, Laurie. And I still do love thrifting. It's one of my favourite pastimes, and I don't go as often as I maybe did a few years ago, but definitely once a month, or once or twice a month maybe, depending on availability and inclination, I guess. But I did get a jazzy jumper and I figured I would wear it today to model it. It's got some detail on the cuffs as well. So yeah, couldn't resist a vintage jazzy jumper, and I was quite pleased to find this one. It's been a while. I have restrained myself actually from buying jazzy jumpers for quite a while because I accumulated a lot of them, and then yeah, I think I kind of went past that phase of them, but this one brought it back. And actually on the same trip, so this was just a couple of weeks ago, I found a couple of other things. I got this vintage leopard print blouse from Virgo 2, dry clean only. I didn't dry clean it, I threw it in the wash and it was fine. But that was cool. And I also got this black, or like, you know, faded to grey denim jacket. It's just Forever 21, but you know, it's still cool. I will definitely get plenty of wear out of this, and it was really cheap, so I was pleased to find that. So yeah, those are my latest finds. Nothing too wildly exciting, unfortunately, but I have also thrifted some books over the past couple of months. I've been meaning to do a book haul, so yeah, hopefully in the coming weeks I will be able to get a book haul up. Okay, next question is from Horror Gardener, the lovely Michael. My question: we know a lot about your book and film choices, but I'm interested in your musical side. What are your favourite bands or genres, and what are you currently listening to? So this kind of question always, like, I draw a blank and I'm like, what even is music? Let alone what are my favourite bands? So I prepared for this one and I had a look through my Spotify and jotted down a bunch of bands. Some of these are long-time favourites that I have listened to for many years. Some of these are more recent favourites. But yeah, generally some, yeah, industrial, goth, dark wave, electronic, yeah, just kind of a mixture of that stuff. I'd say they're my go-to genres. I also like just a lot of 80s stuff. The 80s is definitely my favourite decade for music, so really anything 80s I'm quite a fan of. Yeah, if I could only listen to one decade of music for the rest of my life, it would totally be the 1980s. Although, yeah, a lot of these are from different eras, but still. So I'll just read off this list. We've got Skinny Puppy, who I'm actually going to go see live soon, and I'm so excited. Nine Inch Nails, Sisters of Mercy, London After Midnight, She Passed Away, Depeche Mode, Clan of Zymox, The Misfits, Typo Negative, Youth Code, Vexagon, Boy Harsher, Spike Hellis, Lorne, Fuck Buttons, Blank Mass, and Gatekeeper. So I listen to like way more than that, but those are ones that kind of jumped out to me, I guess, when I was looking through my Spotify. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a general idea of the stuff I like. Next up is a question from Jason. Thank you. He asked, in terms of books, films and albums, which are the ones you think are so awesome that you wish you could experience them for the first time again? And this was another question that I really had to think about. And I'm not sure I have like a really satisfactory answer, I'm afraid. Yeah, I guess I don't necessarily think of books and films and other stuff that I consume like that as, you know, first time, you know, experiences, because in a way that maybe suggests that, you know, they lose something after the first time you've viewed or read it, or that, you know, they can't be as good second time around. And yeah, I don't know if I really view things as the first time being the only time, I guess. I think a lot can be got out of, you know, music, films, books on repeat consumption of them, you know, especially with music. Like, I'm the kind of person that I'll have like 10 songs on repeat for like a month straight. I won't listen to anything else. I'll just be obsessed with like a handful of things and then I'll move on to something else. But yeah, and I'm not a huge rereader or rewatcher actually, but when I have reread or reviewed something, yeah, it's usually a great experience still. If I've enjoyed it the first time around, I usually still really enjoy it the second time around. There's a couple of exceptions to the rule, I think, but yeah, I can't even think of an example. But occasionally revisiting something is not the same as it is the first time around, so I totally get that. But yeah, there's a couple of books that I read years ago and have reread in recent years, and I was definitely hesitant to do so because, yeah, I did wonder if revisiting it was going to live up to that first experience, but I absolutely loved them. So yeah, that's probably not the answer you were looking for. There are definitely plenty of books and films and stuff that I absolutely love, but I think, you know, in a lot of cases I love them even more once I have, you know, consumed them more than once, if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't know if that was a great answer. Okay, next question is from Retro Betty Reads. Hello. I'd love to know more about how content creation has impacted your reading style and behaviour. Yeah, really interesting question. So I actually had a look back on my Goodreads for some stats for this, because I started my YouTube channel in 2016, although it wasn't book related, and I think that was the year that it looked like I had started using Goodreads. So I don't know whether this is everything I read that year, but there were only 8 books for 2016 on my Goodreads, so I don't know. But then the next year, 2017, I read 43 books. So I think at that point I was definitely keeping track of everything I was reading. And then I kind of moved my YouTube channel to being more specifically BookTube in 2018, and that year I doubled my reading from 43 to 86. So yeah, there's definitely a distinct correlation there. The following year I got up to 102 books, and then yeah, over the recent years since, it's been either like 90 to 100 seems to have been where I'm at the past few years. So yeah, BookTube has definitely made me read more. I think it's made me make that more of a priority of my free time. I mean, I've always been a reader ever since a young age. Reading is always a pastime that I have really enjoyed, but it's definitely something that has kind of maybe ebbed and flowed over the years. So I think it's a combination of things. I think part of it is just, yeah, me wanting to get back into reading, really getting passionate about it again, and making it something that I, you know, want to put some of my free time into doing. But then in addition to that, I think sharing my reading on like BookTube and Instagram and Goodreads, I think it does, you know, kind of push you to read more, but I don't feel it as a pressure of BookTube that I feel I have to read more. It's just I want to read more because I want to, yeah, read more books to be able to talk about them with you. So yeah, it's definitely, BookTube has definitely prompted me to be reading more, which, you know, is great because I love reading, and books are cool. And the next question is, what's your favourite vintage paperback book cover? Yeah, this was a tough one and I didn't narrow it down to one. I pulled a few books off my shelves. I just went off ones that I own, but I mean, there are so many great vintage horror book covers, it's really hard to choose. So I'm cheating here and I've got 6 books. The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum, absolutely iconic cover. Yeah, doesn't prepare you for the contents of the book in the slightest, but Skeleton Cheerleader is amazing. Another Skeleton, Wait and See by Ruby Jean Jensen. This one is just wonderful. Yeah, chained skeleton with a knife, amazing. We also have Pin by Andrew Needleman, which has a great cover anyway, and then it also has this wonderful step back art. So yeah, big fan of this one. Pranks by Dennis Higman, just because it's so weird. It's just like, what is happening here? Yeah, and then amazing typography. So yeah, I love that one. And Halo by Chet Day. Again, I love, yeah, the typography, and then, yeah, the character here with the jacket and the skull. I mean, that's just absolutely badass. Love it. And last but not least, I mean, the whole Witches series, their covers are amazing. But I mean, it speaks for itself, I think. So yeah, those are just a few of my favourites, but there are so many. Oh my gosh, I could have gone on way more than 6. So I'll leave it at that though. Adriana, who has also been a long time subscriber, she asked, I've watched videos where you said that Cronenberg is your favourite director, and he is mine too. Awesome. Which are your top 3 Cronenberg films and why? Okay, so Videodrome is definitely number 1. It will always be my number 1. I love that film. I just think it's so unique. It was definitely one of his films that I saw in my teenage years, so I think it had quite an impact on me at the time. And yeah, I still think today it stands out as really unique in the concept. It was also quite ahead of its time in that commentary on, you know, what media can do to us. And also, yeah, the body horror effects are still amazing. So yeah, and also sex and violence and weird body horror is just just my thing. So that is definitely my favourite. I think number 2 is probably has to be The Fly. I think that might be like one of his best, or at least one of his best films. But I do prefer Videodrome, just content-wise. But I do think The Fly is an absolutely amazing film, like definitely 5 stars. It has, yeah, again, amazing effects. It also has like a really strong emotional element to the story. Like, oh my god, that film makes me cry a lot. It's also just a great concept. And while it is kind of a sci-fi horror, it definitely doesn't skimp on the horror. Like, it is, yeah, very much a horror film. And super interesting that it, you know, is a remake essentially, but does something so different with that concept. And yeah, it's definitely just an amazing film. But yeah, for number 3, this is where it gets difficult because I love a lot of his films. And yeah, I've seen all of his feature films except that one he did about racing cars. But yeah, and I definitely do prefer his like earlier horror stuff from like the 70s through the 90s. I do really enjoy his more recent stuff, a lot of it moving away from horror. Yeah, I love that stuff too, but I think I narrowed it down to like 3, and I guess that would be Crash, Dead Ringers and Scanners. I really like the story of Scanners. Again, it's got some great effects, like head explosion scene, and Michael Ironside is hot. And Dead Ringers, yeah, Jeremy Irons is just fantastic in that film. And it's just a very unsettling and kind of bleak and depressing film, but absolutely fantastic. And then Crash is, that's actually one that I rewatched within the past year or 2, and I had not seen it since back in the 90s probably. So it's been a while, but I remember loving it years ago when I saw it as a teenager, and it probably had quite an impact on me. But yeah, rewatching it, yeah, that film has like just such a mood to the whole film, and it's just so wonderfully done, and such a strange film, but such a great one. So yeah, I don't know, it's hard to pick. I think I'll go Crash. So Videodrome, The Fly, Crash. But yeah, ask me on a different day, it might be slightly different for the 3rd pick, because he has so many great films. Okay, next question is from It Came From The Page, the lovely Andrew. My question would be, what was the most fun you had putting together a video? So I feel like book haul videos are always fun to do because it's always exciting to look through the books that you've recently accumulated and share them with people that are also going to be excited about them. So they're always fun to do. That time I dressed up as a clown for the Voice of the Clown book review was a great time. dressing up in general, any excuse really, Garth Marenghi. I can't remember what else I've done, but yeah, it was definitely another highlight. And yeah, another one that I had fun doing was, I think, one I did last year where I was comparing covers of the Point horror books, like the US and UK versions. That was a lot of fun to do. Yeah, didn't get a lot of views, but that's fine. I enjoyed doing it, so, you know, that's good. And I didn't go through all of the covers in that video, so I do intend on doing another one of those at some point when I get around to it. But yeah, those are definitely a few that jumped to mind that were really fun to make. Okay, next question is from Bimpy96, the lovely Matthew. Has there been any book that you were super excited to read, but then it turned out to be a huge letdown? Thankfully that doesn't happen too often, but there is one book that I bought, this is going back a couple of years, I bought it purely because of the cover. This is The Uprising by Abigail McDaniels, which is a pen name. I think it was for like a husband and wife writing duo. But yeah, this cover is just absolutely wonderful, and the premise sounded really interesting. I think it was some kind of cult thing, some satanic cult going on, which, you know, is always a good time. Well, not always, apparently. Yeah, this one, it had a great concept and obviously a great cover, but the story was just really meh. I think I ended up giving this only 2 stars. Yeah, it wasn't good, unfortunately, so it was definitely a letdown. I was definitely disappointed that it didn't live up to my hopes. And literally the only reason that I still have this on my shelf is because of the cover. I didn't want to get rid of it because I love the cover so much. Yeah, but if push comes to shove, yeah, I definitely don't need to keep this because I'm unlikely to ever read it again. And then, yeah, other than that, I think there's been a couple of more, you know, more popular books that have been, yeah, generally very highly regarded and highly rated. You know, I've seen plenty of other booktubers and bookstagrammers talk highly of them. I wrote down a couple, Nosferatu by Joe Hill, Bunny by Mona Awad, and The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Those were 3 that, yeah, had a lot of hype, but they just weren't for me, I guess. I didn't like them. I think they were all 2-star reads for me. So yeah, definitely disappointing. I have read some other Grady Hendrix books and really enjoyed them. So yeah, that was just a bit of a blip for me, I guess. But yeah, it's always a shame when, you know, you're excited for a book and then it's just meh. But not every book is meant for every person. There are always other books to pick up and check out instead, so I try not to dwell on the bad ones. Next question is from Everett Roberts. I know Battle Royale was one of your top reads last year. Have you read or plan on reading any more Japanese authors, such as Koji Suzuki or Ryu Murakami? I have not read either of those authors, but they definitely are on my radar. I just don't own any of their books at this point. So yeah, I really need to pick them up. They're definitely ones I would like to read. But there are some other Japanese authors that I have read and really enjoyed. I actually did a little article for Ghouls magazine, I think it was sometime last year, so if I remember to link that below, I will do so. There were 5 books that I recommended in that article, so I'll just go through them now because they were all really great. Japanese Tales of Mystery and Imagination by Edogawa Rampo. So that's a short story collection, like he was writing in like, I think the 20s and 30s. And yeah, they were wacky and really unique and great. The Graveyard Apartment by Mariko Koike. This one has very mixed reviews, but I was a big fan of it. I thought it was excellent. It's kind of, yeah, essentially a haunted house story, but set in an apartment building. Now You're One of Us by Asa Nonami. That one is, yeah, marrying into a family that has some weird shit going on. Revenge by Yoko Ogawa. This is another short story collection. These ones are more intertwined with each other, which was really cool and really well done. Yeah, definitely some unique tales in here and some unsettling ones. Really enjoyed that. and Goth by Otsuichi, which is about these two teenagers who are really obsessed with true crime. And this is told also in a really interesting way. It's almost like, not quite short stories, but kind of vignettes of these different cases that they're looking into. Definitely an interesting one. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, those are ones that I have read and really enjoyed, but yeah, I would definitely like to read more. Nicholas Kaufman, wonderful author of The Hungry Earth and The Stone Serpents. Go check them out. I really enjoyed them. He says, you have a clear affinity for vintage horror. Is there something in particular that vintage horror offers that you find lacking in contemporary horror? That's a really interesting question, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is about vintage horror that I love so much, but I think one obvious part of it is the nostalgia. So even though I might not have read these books at the time, I am nostalgic for that era, and especially that era of horror. So, you know, in a sense, it's like me going back to that era when I pick one of these up and getting to experience something that I wasn't able to do so at the time. So that's a big factor for me. I think it also holds that a little bit of, you know, the forbidden fruit thing, because I wasn't allowed to watch horror films when I was growing up. And while I did get into horror fiction, you know, because of that, you know, I didn't have access to much of it. So, you know, part of it is, now that I do have the ability to access many more, I'm, just going hog wild on it, I guess. And I feel like there's definitely a bit of a trend, you know, currently for, you know, throwing back to the 80s and 90s within horror fiction and, you know, setting stories in that time period, you know, which is cool. You know, it's nice to have that, you know, still gives you some kind of nostalgia, but it's definitely a different experience to reading something that was written back then. I don't know if I've really read anything like keeping that in mind to, be able to kind of assess it a bit more. It would be interesting, I guess, to read a book that I didn't know when it was from and just see what my experience with it would be. And I don't necessarily think that contemporary horror literature is lacking in anything. It's just, you know, it's just different. I think the readers out there want something different. The publishers out there want something different. So I think, you know, we have quite an array. You know, we've got the stuff that is a bit more mainstream and is maybe horror light, you know, but we've got plenty of like indie publishers publishing, you know, crazy extreme stuff. And then there's everything in between. So I do think, you know, one of the good things about horror right now is that it is very varied. But for me personally, there's just something about, you know, the vintage horror fiction that really speaks to me and that I am passionate about. So don't know if that was a very good answer, but hopefully it gives you some idea of where my mind is at on that. Next question is from Lon Anderson. Hello, Lon. I see a lot of people dealing/selling vintage horror books on social media. Is this something you've ever considered doing? And it's definitely something I've considered in the past, but I think you know, just having the time to do that. You know, I work full time. I just don't have the time to do like some kind of side hustle, really. And then, if I was thinking of it in any level of like seriousness, you know, I don't know if there would be enough money in that kind of business to support myself. You know, if anyone watching does so, I'd be very interested to hear about your experience, you know, on that note. But I feel like it's something that would be more of a side hustle than an actual, you know, income that I could rely on. But it's one of those things, like when you're working full time, finding the time to, you know, change your path is really difficult. I've tried it a couple of times in the past and it hasn't worked out. And yeah, I'm not gonna get too involved in that. There has been the odd occasion when I've sold a book here or there online, you know, when I've either had a duplicate of something. If I know it sells for something, I might as well, you know, make the money from it rather than it just taking up shelf space, I guess. A recent example of that is I did sell my copy of Notice by Heather Lewis because I had been looking for that book for a long time and I'd finally found an affordable copy, and I'd read it and I've talked about it here on the channel. And then, yeah, recently I think demand for it has risen, and I just happened to look it up on eBay a little while ago, and there was one up for auction which I think ended up selling for like over $600. And I was like, you know what, I think I might sell my copy because I really need the money. As some of you may know, I've had some unexpected dental work the past few months, and yeah, so far that's cost me like almost $3,000, you know, and I mean, I'll make it work, but stuff like that, when it happens, it, you know, it makes it a bit difficult to, you know, deal with. So yeah, I ended up selling my copy of that, and I did feel like a bit of a scumbag because, yeah, I just feel a bit weird about making money off something like that. But then again, you know, I'm not forcing anyone to buy it. This person clearly had the money to spend on it. So I'm like, yeah, if you've got the money and I need the money, let's do this, I guess is my thinking. So yeah, I didn't sell it for nearly as much as the $600 one. And eBay took like a massive chunk of what I sold it for. But I did end up with, I think it was like $300 and something, which, you know, I'm not going to complain about. It's definitely makes a small dent in my dental bills, I guess. So that's something. But yeah, I guess back to the question, I've gone off on a tangent there. Yeah, if selling books is something that I knew I could support myself doing, yeah, I would absolutely do it in a heartbeat. But yeah, I don't know if it is. And yeah, I'm not really in a position to be like trying out a new small business as my career and like leaving my job or anything like that. So we'll see. Maybe I should do some more research on it. If anyone has any insights, I would love to hear about them. But yeah, very interesting question. Okay, next question is from the lovely Eerie B. Is there any book that breaks your heart in terms of being out of reach from an inflated price, or it just being missing in action, or maybe unfinished by the author? And yeah, I had to think about this one. Great question. But yeah, I did have to think about it because there isn't a book that like immediately jumps to mind. You know, there isn't one that keeps me up at night, you know, yearning for, I guess. But I did think of two when I put my mind to it. So one of them is the third book in the Friday the 13th series, The Carnival by Eric Morse, because I have the other three books in the series, but I do not have The Carnival. I've been lucky enough to find those three out in the wild at thrift stores and library book sales. But yeah, I mean, the chances of me stumbling upon the one that I am now missing is slim. I can always hold out hope though. But yeah, people list those books for crazy money online, and I just don't have that kind of money to spend on a book. So yeah, that's definitely one I would love to get one day. And the other one is The Slime Beast by Guy N. Smith. Because yeah, I hear great things about his earlier work. I do have a couple of his books from the 90s, but I think his like 70s and 80s era is, you know, he's more well known for that. But The Slime Beast specifically, because the synopsis says it's about a professor searching for King John's lost treasure in the Wash. And the Wash is an area of the sea, I guess, on the east coast of England. That's actually where I grew up. So I'm not sure specifically where the book is set, but it's definitely, you know, seems to be in my neck of the woods. So I just thought it would be really interesting to read a book set in that area, because yeah, that doesn't happen too often. But yeah, that one also seems, you know, generally sells for quite a bit online. So yeah, definitely not something I would be dropping a lot of money on, but if one day I see one for cheap, I will grab it. Next question is from Cassie, who just recently started a booktube channel here. She's been on like Instagram and Twitter for ages, but she just started the channel and she's wonderful. You should absolutely go check her channel out. She says, what are your favourite types of videos to make? Reviews, wrap-ups, lists, etc. Yeah, I think book hauls, I think I mentioned for a previous question, I do enjoy a book haul. I feel like not everyone likes watching book hauls, which is crazy to me because they're some of my favourite videos to watch as well. But yeah, definitely filming book hauls is something I'm a big fan of. Yeah, it's just, I think, sharing that excitement for books you've recently bought or been gifted or whatever, like, yeah, there's just so much joy in book hauls, I feel like. So they're always fun to do. And yeah, it's not to say I don't enjoy doing other videos as well. Like I do enjoy talking about books I have read, you know, which is maybe has a bit more substance than just, you know, sharing book covers essentially. But yeah, I think reading wrap-ups are definitely something I enjoy doing, but they are, you know, they're a bit more work than say a book haul video. So they might not be necessarily as enjoyable in the process, but yeah, being able to share, talking about books that you've enjoyed and recommending books, you know, that's always a good time. And vlogs are fun to do too. I don't do too many of them, but I have enjoyed, you know, doing the occasional one in the past. So yeah, I really should do more of those. Yeah, I think those are definitely a few types of videos that I enjoy the most. Next up is a question from the one and only Mr. Morningstar. When will you be writing more stories or novels? Good question. So I definitely have plenty of ideas. Like I'm always writing ideas down, like I have done for years. I just write ideas down. Finding the time to do anything with those ideas is where I really struggle. So yeah, I have been trying over recent months to put in, you know, an hour or so here and there of focusing on writing, but yeah, it's just hard to find the time really. So I am working on a short story right now, like a specific short story for an anthology that I think is, you know, open for submissions soon. So hopefully I can get that finished and it will be okay enough for me to want to submit. It's still a work in progress right now, so we'll see. But yeah, it's just finding the time I think is the biggest hurdle for me because yeah, it's just free time is so limited. And then within that free time, you know, you've also just got to be like in the right frame of mind to do it, and that just doesn't happen too often. You know, sometimes you just have to force it. You just have to be like, right, I'm doing it today, I'm doing it tomorrow, or whatever the case is. Just be like, I'm sitting down and doing it. So I've been trying to do that because, you know, the stars are never going to align to be like the perfect time to write. You know, you just have to do it. But yeah, even then there's just so much life stuff to do, and also, you know, you need to relax and take time for yourself as well. So anyway, yeah, I think I've made my point now that it's a struggle to find the time, but I will definitely keep you posted if anything develops with that. The lovely Edie Lewis asked, what got you started in doing booktube? So I had started my channel back in 2016, which is crazy, as a thrifting channel. And yeah, after a couple of years of that, I think just watching more stuff on YouTube, at some point within that time, I somehow stumbled upon booktube. I don't remember exactly how I did or who exactly I was watching. There were definitely a few channels I watched, but I think as time went on, I found ones that were a bit more specifically, you know, my reading taste, and found a few like people talking about horror fiction. And so yeah, I think it was just, you know, something that once I realized it was a thing that other people were doing, I was like, oh, I want to join in with that. So it was kind of as simple as that, really. And since I already had my channel set up, it was just a case of, yeah, kind of like transitioning my content into something else, because I'd already got everything set up already. So yeah, it was just, yeah, having that opportunity to talk about books, connect with other people who also like books. So yeah, simple as that, really. And yeah, before you know it, it's 2023 and you're still here talking about books. Next question is from Meet, the lovely Nicole. When did your love of horror begin? Mine was when I was very young. Creepshow was on, and the scene where Nate's hand bursts from the ground during the Father's Day segment was my turning point. I've been obsessed with horror ever since. That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like maybe it's just my memory isn't as good to be specific on these things, or at least specific on what came first, you know, exactly like when certain things happened. But yeah, I think growing up, horror wasn't something I was allowed to watch when I was younger, but there were definitely some films that, you know, weren't necessarily horror films, but they might have had some horror elements, you know, like The Burbs and High Spirits. Films like that were definitely ones I saw when I was quite younger, and, you know, they had some kind of scary scenes in them. And yeah, while my parents were a bit strict on that kind of thing, my best friend at primary school, her parents were way more lenient, and she had a couple of older sisters as well, and so yeah, they were pretty much allowed to watch whatever they wanted. So I definitely caught some things over at her place. A Nightmare on Elm Street was definitely one of them, which, yeah, terrified me. It was great. And yeah, another one that I saw at a young age was Ghost Watch. I think it's, you know, become a bit more well known in recent years, but it was presented as a real live TV segment in a supposed haunted house, but it was all fake. But yeah, it traumatized an entire nation, basically, especially 11-year-old me. So yeah, so that I think was definitely one that I can pinpoint when it happened. And yeah, just absolutely scared the pants off me. But I loved it and I knew I wanted more. Okay, next question is from the lovely Mr. Mortman. What's your favourite snack? Great question. If we're talking savoury, then I do really love those peanut butter crackers. I don't know, I'm just kind of obsessed with those. I always have one of those, like, as a mid-morning snack. But then if we're talking like a sweet snack, I think if we're talking like favourite chocolate bar, it would probably be Snickers. Mentioning the dental stuff again, I've definitely, you know, found a love for soft snacks. So applesauce, rice pudding, Jell-O, soft snacks have definitely seen me through some dark times. So got to give a shout out to them. Next question is from Pad92011. What do you think is the difference in the style of mass market horror books and independent horror books? And which one do you prefer? So I guess some of this, it might be similar to the question that Nicholas asked earlier. But yeah, I guess one thing with indie horror is, you know, there's that freedom to put out whatever you want to put out. You know, especially if it's self-published, then obviously you can put out whatever the hell you want. If it's an indie publisher, you know, finding you know, someone that's just on the same wavelength as you and willing to put your work out there. But yeah, I do feel like there seems to be a lot more freedom within indie publishing. So I think that means, you know, there are a lot of interesting authors coming through that way that, you know, might not have necessarily been able to get, you know, traditionally published. And I guess, you know, looking back to vintage horror, I guess that was kind of a mixed bag, because in a way it was, you know, part of it was, you know, there was a horror boom. So, you know, publishers were just like, if you write horror, let's publish it. So I feel like there must have been some kind of freedom there as well. You know, as long as you were able to get the work to the right publisher, and they thought there was a market for it, then great. But I think on the other hand, you know, a lot of it was oh, well, this was popular, let's just try and replicate it. So, you know, that's why you see a lot of similar, you know, subgenres and tropes and stuff that's just, you know, they were being churned out. So yeah, I feel like the vintage horror was maybe more of a mixed bag in that respect. But yeah, and I guess that's not to say, you know, there isn't some, you know, indie horror that is maybe just trying to cash in on something, you know, some kind of trend, or, you know, something they think is gonna be popular. Yeah, I feel like there's probably a bit of both in both types of publishing, in both eras kind of thing. But yeah, I enjoy both. I think I prefer vintage horror just because I think, like I mentioned earlier, it just has that nostalgia factor that is so enticing to me, and is just exciting to me to kind of look back and, you know, some of these like forgotten gems that no one talks about, you know, that is exciting to me, to pick up a book that might be, you know, some amazing hidden gem. And that's not to say that the stuff that is currently coming out isn't exciting, but it just doesn't have that same, you know, je ne sais quoi for me, I guess. Next question is from Judy Chapman, who is a long-time viewer from back in the Hey Little Thrifter days. So hey Judy, do you have a job/profession outside of YouTube? Yes, I do. I work full-time. I've been working there for a few years now, and essentially it's a small business where we sell cameras and photographic equipment, mostly used online. So we, you know, sell on a variety of platforms, you know, eBay, Etsy, Amazon, and yeah, we're just a small team of people, and we do, yeah, everything in-house. Yeah, writing items up, photographing items, listing the items, answering questions, pulling items, packing items once they've sold, you know, all of that whole process we take care of. Yeah, the pay isn't great, but it is a chill job. It's very low stress, and my co-workers are awesome. So, you know, there's always got to be a trade-off somewhere, and I've definitely had stressful jobs in the past, and yeah, even though I've probably earned a bit more, I've gotten to the point where that's just not worth it for me. I'd much rather, you know, keep some of my sanity and maybe earn a little bit less and, you know, just make it work. So yeah, so that's what I do full time. And are you living in the United States? And if so, are you enjoying it? Yeah, so I've been here for several years now, and I'm currently living in Pittsburgh, and I do like it generally. I mean, no place is perfect, but Pittsburgh is cool. It's a good sized city. It's like not too big. I lived in like London for several years, and I just really grew to hate it. A, because it's so expensive, and B, it's just so busy and so huge. It was just really stressful to me. So yeah, it's a bit more of a manageable sized city, but you know, there's still cool and interesting things going on. Next question is from Culture Fan. Where were you from in the UK? I am from, I guess I mentioned earlier, the Wash, but specifically the county that I'm from is Lincolnshire. So that is on, yeah, the east coast of England. I wasn't born there, but I did spend the vast majority of my life there. So yeah, I grew up in a small village, probably a fairly typical, you know, not particularly interesting English village, but yeah, I think I appreciate growing up in more of a rural atmosphere as a kid, and having that ability to go outside adventuring. But then once you get into your teens, you're like, this place is boring. And so as soon as I was able to move away to a city, I did so. And next question is, what are your top 5 horror films? So this is a tough question. I have a Letterboxd account, and if you're familiar with it, you can add like your top 4 kind of on your profile page. So even though I set this ages ago, it's probably pretty accurate. The 4 that I have on there are Halloween, Suspiria, Videodrome, and The Monster Squad. I think that definitely, they're all amazing films, ones that have been favourites for a long time. and yeah, I love them. But yeah, picking number 5 is really tough. I think I wrote down a couple here when I was trying to like narrow it down. So I've got Candyman, Hellraiser, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. But I mean, I could pick out another, 10 or 20 films, without thinking too hard as well. So yeah, narrowing it down to a top 5 is really tough. I don't know if I could pick out of those 3 though, because as soon as I pick one, I'm then like, no, the other, and then I'm no, the other. So yeah, anyway, I did my best. Next up is a question from Midnight Graffiti 4265. Who is your favourite vintage YA author? And yeah, I had to think about this one. I think one of the authors that jumps to mind is Richie Tankersley Cusick. I've definitely read several of her books and enjoyed them all. And definitely some of them are, ones that I think are really great. I feel like I've definitely read a lot of R.L. Stine as well, but he's a bit more hit and miss. He definitely has some great ones, but he also has some like not so great ones. And then there are other authors that I've only read like 1 or 2 of. So, it's hard to call them a favourite necessarily. So yeah, I'd probably go with Richie Tankersley Cusick. I've really enjoyed a lot of her books. And the next part of the question is, what is your favourite point horror book? Which, funnily enough, ends up being a Richie Tankersley Cusick book. This is Trick or Treat, which actually also works as one of my favourite vintage horror covers because I love this cover. I think it's absolutely wonderful. It used to kind of scare me as a kid because it reminded me of Halloween, the film. And yeah, anyway, I remember loving this book when I read it as a kid. And yeah, I revisited it a handful of years ago and still loved it. So I would say this is probably my favourite. There are definitely other point horror books that I have loved as well. And I'm really trying to work my way through reading the rest of them so I can do, a video about my favourite point horror books. But obviously I've got to read them all before I can do that. So that video is going to be a while coming. But so yeah, for now, let's just keep it as this one. This is definitely my favourite as of now. Next question is from Harry 8130. My question would have to be about your hair, actually. I've always wondered if there was any particular inspiration for your bob. So I guess this kind of bob is maybe more typically like 1920s style, but my inspiration was more like the 90s, like the cool edgy 90s version of that. So, I don't know whether that translates to me and my hair specifically, but that was definitely my inspiration. And, I'm definitely cool and edgy in my own mind. So that's all that matters, I guess. But no, seriously, yeah, my hair is just naturally very straight. So it doesn't really do much of anything. So it's I either have it long or every once in a while I'll get bored and I'll cut it shorter. And I'll either have a fringe or I won't. So that my hair is just generally one of those combinations of those options. I hadn't ever done the combination of the shorter hair with the fringe or bangs. So yeah, whenever it was that I got my hair cut, I was just, yeah, it was just ready, time for a change. I was ready for something a bit different. And yeah, I've been enjoying having this kind of haircut. So yeah, I think it'll definitely be sticking around for the foreseeable future until I get bored of this and then want to grow it out, I guess. Next question is from user, and then, yeah, forgive me, but letters and numbers. Are there any words or phrases you'd rather not see used in literature? Something that when you come to it, you stop and wish you could go back in time to politely request that the author refrain from using it, or if they simply must use it, that they do so less often. Yeah, really good question. I don't think there's anything particular, but the only thing that did come to mind was, I think, with, contemporary horror that is coming out, but it's maybe set in like the 80s, for example, and, in order to kind of set the tone of the era, they might use some outdated language or slurs, that kind of thing, because, it would be accurate for the time. And I just feel like, can we not? You know, I mean, I feel like if it's really integral to your story or to a specific character, then you do what you gotta do. But I just feel like it sometimes comes across as a bit of a lazy way of, you know, trying to capture the time period. You know, there are other ways to do that. So yeah, it's just always a bit like eye roll worthy, you know, when I do come across that kind of thing in stuff that is coming out today, just because, yeah, I feel like there's just not really a need for it. Next question is from Stephen Carsley. Are you doing any more? I think you mean Vampire Vault. So that was the, yeah, vintage vampire book reviews that I did a series of a while ago. Yeah, that kind of fell by the wayside, unfortunately, and I don't have any specific plans to bring it back in the near future, but yeah, that's definitely not to say that it won't ever return. I don't know if it would be back as a regular series, but I might do the occasional video here and there, so we will see. Next question is from Bernard Mulligan. What are you looking forward to the most at StokerCon this year? Great question. So yeah, StokerCon this year is being held in Pittsburgh, so I was like, I'm gonna have to push my social anxiety aside and go to this, because I feel like if I didn't go when it's on my doorstep, I would regret it. But yeah, I think the thing I'm definitely most excited about is just getting to meet some people. I know there are definitely a couple of BookTube friends that are going to be attending as well. So I am really, really excited to actually get to meet them, and hopefully we can, yeah, find some time to hang out. That would be amazing. So I very much look forward to that. And yeah, in addition to that, yeah, I don't think they've released their, you know, schedule of what's happening exactly yet. So yeah, I couldn't name a specific thing that I'm looking forward to, you know, attending there, but I do know that the guests of honour, so we've got Jewel Gomez, Alma Katsu, Owl Going Back, Cynthia Palaio, Rath James White, and Daniel Kraus. So yeah, pretty excited to, yeah, be in the same room as them. I guess if I met them, I don't know if I would know what to say, because yeah, I don't know, I just get so awkward about those kind of things. But yeah, I think it's going to be a good time, so I very much look forward to it. And yeah, if anyone watching is going to be there, let me know. Okay, we've got a few more questions to go. Next up is from Cat Novel Adventures, who also recently started a channel here on BookTube, and she's absolutely wonderful, so please do go check out her channel. And she asked, why did you choose the Bookubus for your channel name? So yeah, this goes back a couple of years, and my husband was talking about how over recent years I've just been reading like more and more, whereas he's been reading less and less. And so yeah, he called me a bookubus as a play on the succubus, as though, yeah, I was like taking his reading energy away from him. And anyway, it was a great play on words, and I thought, oh my god, that would make a great channel name. Yeah, because as I mentioned previously, I'd started my channel as a thrifting channel, so it was Hey Little Thrifter. And then even once I had switched over to being fully, you know, book related, I just couldn't come up with a good name for my channel, so I just kept it as Hey Little Thrifter. But then once that name dropped in my lap, I was like, yes, it is time to, you know, change the channel name to the Bookubus. And next question is, what is your favourite kind of video to film? So yeah, I think I already touched on this, but yeah, book haul videos are always super fun. Yeah, I do like the occasional vlog, and then yeah, those times when you've read a book that you really, really loved and you want to talk about it and tell everyone. Yeah, those are always great videos to film as well. Next question is from Carly Adair. Hey Carly, my question is, what is the creepiest book you ever read? I totally forgot to grab this book off the shelf. I was trying to prepare and have things ready, but I guess I missed this one. But it is Deliver Us from Evil by Alan Lee Harris. Yeah, this had some of the creepiest scenes I've ever read. It's definitely an underrated one. You know, it's kind of like a vintage hidden gem. I'm pretty sure Cameron Chaney also read this and reviewed it, and he really enjoyed it too. So yeah, that's definitely two good recommendations there. And what is your favourite series ever? And I'm not like a big series reader, I guess. There are definitely quite a lot of books that I've read the first book of a series, and it's not that I don't want to continue with them. It's just, I guess I just haven't yet. So yeah, there haven't been a ton of series that I have read. So unfortunately, I don't really have a good answer for this. If we're talking just like more general series, then probably Point Horror, because yeah, that just is one of my favourite things and I will always enjoy those books. But yeah, as more of like a strictly you know, one book following on from another type of series, yeah, I just need to read some more, I guess, continue with some of the series I've started. And the last question is from Criminally. What do you miss most about the UK? So I actually felt a bit sad when I read this question because, you know, I miss my family and, you know, I haven't been able to go back since 2019. That was the last time I went back to the UK, and I saw my sister on that trip, which was awesome, but I haven't seen her since, and I haven't seen my mum since before then. It was a trip, I think, the year or 2 years before then. So yeah, it's been a minute and that makes me sad. You know, we do keep in touch, you know, through the wonderful, you know, opportunities that we can keep in touch through the internet. And, you know, I still chat with my mum on like, you know, video call once a week, which is great. But, you know, it isn't the same as just being able to hang out with them. So I'm really hoping to be able to go visit at some point before too long, but yeah, nothing set in stone yet. But yeah, they're definitely the thing I miss most. But I think other than that, I mean, obviously fish and chips with mushy peas and bacon butties are probably two of the things I miss the most. Everyone rags on British food, but like, I love British food. We have great food. So yeah, next time I do visit the UK, I will have to make the most of it and have, you know, all of the fry-ups, all of the bacon butties, all of the fish and chips, all of the curries. Yeah, so I look forward to that, you know, and seeing my family too as well. That'll be fun. So I feel like I've been talking forever, and this is probably going to end up being a pretty long video. So if you're still here, then thank you ever so much for watching. Thank you again to everyone that entered the giveaway and who submitted questions. I have really enjoyed answering all of the questions, and yeah, I apologise if any of my answers weren't the best, but hopefully it was still fun to watch. And yeah, I guess that wraps it up for now. So thank you again for 5k. I appreciate the hell out of all of you. You are all awesome. And yeah, like I said, any of the people that ask me questions that have booktube channels, I will leave them linked below. So if you aren't already subscribed to them, I highly suggest you go do so. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next one. Bye.